everybody. This is James on Praagh, and welcome to Life After Death and Beyond. And I'm wearing this hat tonight for a very special reason. I'll tell you in a second. Our love to Kelly. Kelly White is right now on an island of Georgia visiting her family. And of course, Kelly is experiencing hurricanes and tornadoes and floods. So we love you, Kelly. Good luck. My goodness, what a year it's been. So tonight's guest is a very special person that I met recently, and he has a wonderful podcast, and it's called Next Level Soul. And I was a guest on his podcast several times, and I find that Alex Ferrari was one of the easiest people to talk with, and also one that it goes deep with every topic. So it's my honor to bring this wonderful guest on, Alex Ferrari. Hello, Alex.
Hello, James. How are you? Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm trying to, for all the hosts in the spiritual space, to start wearing hats. That's my goal.
There you go.
I'm bringing it back, baby. And I do have hair, everybody. I do have hair. I just want, because a lot of people don't know. Look, there it is. I just choose to wear my hat.
Yeah, you look good in the hat. So I mean, we met each other probably within a year, you'd say?
About a year and change ago is when you came onto the show the first time, and then the episode exploded, and you were like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know." And then you came on again, and the episode did very well, and we've become good friends since then.
Yeah,
we both, as they say, walked over the same bodies in Hollywood on the battlefield. So
that's why I wanted to start with you, your background in Hollywood, because you were in the film business for a while. How did that get started? Tell us your background.
So I worked in a video store back in the days. I started working. I was working no, I did a mom and pop. I was a mom and pop shop. Okay. I never worked for the evil Blockbuster. They're the ones that screwed all those little guys, but they got theirs at the end. But I worked at a video store since I was 14. I was a manager at 15, and I fell in love with movies really then. And I always liked movies, but movies were it was just so magical to me. And I started collecting VHSs, and by the time I was out of high school, I had around 3,000 VHSs in my collection. Wow. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I looked around my room one day. I said, "Hey, I think I'm going to be a director." And I told my mom, and my mom said, "Let's go to film school." And it's exactly what we did. We went to film school. And
were you raised in California or somewhere else?
No, I was raised in Miami. I was raised in the Fort Lauderdale area. Okay. So South Florida. So I was down there and went to school in Orlando, in film school in Orlando. And I didn't come out to LA till 2008 is when I went out to LA. And I was out there for about 13 years. And that's when I kind of built my career, the beginnings of my career in South Florida, and I did a lot of commercial work and editing work and things like that. Did commercials, music videos, short films, and things like that.
But when directing them,
but everything I did everything. When you live in South Florida as a filmmaker, you kind of gotta not just go, "I just direct." No, you gotta kind of do everything all the time in order to eat. So I was an editor. I became a colorist. I was a post supervisor, VFX supervisor. I did a little bit of lighting, but I don't say I'm a DP by any stretch. But I did a little bit of that work, and then I just started directing my own stuff. But I got my first job was in the tape vault in the biggest commercial production house in the Southeast. And I was editing demo reels back in the day on 3/4 inch. That's how old I am. And sending them out on FedEx and things like that to get jobs for directors. So I kind of fell in love with commercial work. Then I was coming up around the time of David Fincher, Michael Bay, Antoine Fuqua, Spike Jonze, that whole commercial crew into the feature world. I was coming up around that time. So that's how I kind of fell in love with movies. And then
you moved to Los Angeles. And
I moved to Los Angeles 2008, started working there, and then started working as a director. Started off essentially as it was my wife and I, who was my wife at the time, and we had a little apartment in North Hollywood.
Sure.
And we had 2 bedrooms. One was our sleeping bedroom. The other one was my edit suite. And I would bring in I mean, I didn't at the time. I had no idea, but I met Justin Bieber when he was like a 15-year-old kid who I'd never seen. 6 months later, he's huge. I had actors coming in. I had big directors coming into my house in North Hollywood. It's a very LA thing. You know how it is.
Yeah.
You could have an Oscar winner. I'm like, yeah, we're going to go to the back of his house to mix the movie. Like,
right.
It's just in the Valley. We're going to Encino for that. So that was kind of the way I got started. And then slowly but surely, I started working a lot and then started directing more and more. I did some TV. I did more commercials, more music videos. And then did my first features, did some feature work later on when I launched my other podcast, which we can get into. But that's kind of where I got started in the film industry. There was that time too that I almost made a $20 million movie for the Mafia. There was that whole that I forgot. I kind of skipped over that when I was 26.
A little bit.
Where is it? Look for it. It's called Shooting for the Mob. I got caught up with this gangster in South Florida.
Really?
Yes, and we almost made a $20 million movie about his life, and my life was being threatened. He was bipolar.
You probably dodged a bullet. Is what I'm thinking.
Many actually.
Yeah.
But the thing was though, that story was interesting enough. I mean, our production offices, Jim, were in a racetrack from 1950s. You could smell the cancer coming from the wall. You could hear it coming in. So I did that, but then Hollywood took this guy seriously. And I was flown out to LA and I met the biggest movie stars in the world. I met the biggest producers in the world. I'm at the Chateau Marmont. I'm at the Ivy. I'm at Spago's. I'm at the Hollywood Hills and these billion-dollar producers' houses.
Right.
The stories I heard, the things I saw. I even got to meet Batman. I went to Batman's house. One of the actors who played Batman, and flew out to his house, hung out with him. It's just insane, that whole story. While my life is being threatened. So can you imagine being so close to your dream, literally, a foot or two away, with Batman saying, I'm going to be in your movie? I mean, seriously, at the time when that actor was one of the biggest stars in the world. And then your life's being threatened by a bipolar psychotic, gangster. So that kind of threw me off for a loop for a while. And I didn't direct I didn't touch a camera for about 2 years afterwards, I would say.
And when did you then move out of Hollywood?
I left LA about 3.5 years ago. We moved to Austin. My family and I moved to Austin.
And you had your first podcast then, or was it just?
Oh yeah, we launched our first podcast in 2015. So
what was the name of that podcast?
Indie Film Hustle. That's in the background. Yeah. So this is the original set that we had when I moved out here. It was called Indie Film Hustle. And it was about filmmaking and screenwriting and distribution and everything about just basically the indie film hustle. And then in that show, I spoke to Oscar winners. I had Oliver Stone on the show, had Eva Longoria, a lot of big stars, a lot of big people came on after many, many years of hustling until I got big enough that they would come on the show. And I got to meet amazing people through the show. Then I opened up a screenwriting podcast, and both of those shows became number one in their space and still arguably are some of the biggest in the space. Even right now, even though I'm not doing them anymore, they're still kind of going with repeats and things like that. And it's still going because there was just really nothing out there like it. And I just came out really just as someone trying to help people. Wanted to help filmmakers. You know how it is. You know how the business is. It's just brutal. And I have enough shrapnel at that time that I could sit there and say, hey, look, this is what it's really like. I don't know what these other guys are saying, but this is what it's really like out in the field. And this is what's really going to happen. And when you get into this situation, this is how you should handle it. And
one thing I love about you, Alex, is your dedication and your passion. And you work really hard, and you're totally passionate and dedicated to your truth. And I mean, anything you do will turn to gold, as it is. And when did you switch from that to Next Level Soul? And when did Next Level Soul come up into your creative genius? And you wanted to switch that? And were you always spiritual, or were you always interested in this topic? Tell me about that.
So when I was 23, I met my spiritual guide. She is alive. I have to preference that. She is alive. And her name is Connie. She's been on the show 4 times.
Her name is Connie. My spiritual guide growing up was Connie. Go on.
Okay, so it's very well. So weird, isn't it? So Connie's been on the show 4 times. She's still alive, and spicy as hell. And she's guided me through my spiritual path essentially throughout my life.
Were you very interested always in it, or you always asking questions?
I'm a recovering Catholic. So
we have that in common too. Yes.
So I'm a recovering Catholic, and I always question. I was that guy in Sunday school, or in religion class, going, "What happened with Jesus when he was 18? I'm just curious. Where was he?" Don't ask about these questions, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I would be that guy constantly. The nuns hated me. I went to Catholic school, so my nuns hated me. So I always was always curious about other philosophies and spiritual paths, and I gravitated towards the Eastern philosophies a lot more. More the Hindu and the Buddhist and the Taoist and the Confucius and those kind of ideas and philosophies, and just thoughts, the systems of thought of those times. And she guided me through a lot of that. She started showing me books, read this book, read that book. And it started, when you read a certain book, it can explode your world.
Yeah.
And I kept getting those dropped every once in a while. And then she gave me a book called Autobiography of a Yogi. And when I read Autobiography of a Yogi, at the first time I read it, I couldn't get through it. It was so far beyond what I could comprehend at that time. It was like, wait a minute, he's biolocating. Yeah. It was so far out of my programming that I couldn't even accept it. And I kind of put the book away, though still always very, very curious about the yogic path and yogic philosophy and things like that. So many years go by, and I've always been interested, always reading, always watching documentaries. It was just something I was always into, near-death experiences, not deeply, but just always touching. As a storyteller, as a filmmaker, that's the fascinated me. History fascinated me. So I would dive deep into ancient civilizations, ancient mysteries, that kind of stuff, like how the pyramids get built, and then what's the connection with spirituality and so on. So then to fast forward through all of that, in I'd say April or March of 2021, Connie calls me. She's like, "Okay, Alex, it's time for you to start a spiritual podcast." And I go, "I'm sorry, what?" It says, "What was that?" And she's like, "Yeah, you need. It's time. You need to start a spiritual podcast." And I said, "Why would I start a spiritual? I'm a filmmaker. I have no street credibilities. I'm not psychic. I'm not a psychic medium. I haven't had a near-death experience. I have no street cred in the spiritual space at all, other than just being a curious guy who's I'm arguably more well-read than most in this space, but still, I'm no expert. I'm no guru or anything like that." And she's like, "No, it's time, and this is kind of why you were put here." And I'm like,
"Let me interrupt you out 1 second by saying exactly that," and I totally agree with her, because that natural curiosity of yours is exactly what the everyday person wants to know about, whatever level they're on. And it's opening, as your podcast now opens to people from just beginning to people who've just been on the path for a long time. So you're that curious person that asks the right questions.
I appreciate that. And it is, I guess, I mean, from my point of view, I thought that you needed to be a guru. You needed to have some sort of.
Well, you are a guru. You're a teacher guru.
I know. I still have problems with that, but
I understand.
But generally, at that time specifically, I really didn't think I had anything to really, give to this space. And she's like, "No, you've got more than you know, and it's time for you to do it. And you have 3 weeks." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, you have what?" And she's like, "You have 3 weeks because Easter's coming up, and it's a great day to start a spiritual podcast." And I said, "Connie, that's impossible. No one could do that in 3 weeks." She's like, "You're right. Not anyone can, but you can."
You can. Yeah.
And 3 weeks later, I had a website, I had a podcast, I had guests, I had Next Level Soul that came to me in a meditation, already on this way to being trademarked. I did it all, and I had it all set up, and I launched. And for the next 6 months or so, I did an episode a week, an episode every couple weeks, because I was still dipping my toe in. I reached out to I only knew one person in the spiritual space, who's Daryl Anka, the great channel of Bashar. And he came on. The lead singer of Iron Maiden came into my site and said, hey, can I come on your show? Not on Next Level Soul, but I said, hey, do you want to talk about spirituality? He's like, yeah, sure. And I brought him on. So those episodes kind of exploded and really took off for the channel. But I was still very closeted at that time.
And we won what platforms we won then?
I was basically just on. Well, when I started Next Level Soul, I understood that YouTube was going to be the leading driver. I just knew that from my experience with the other shows. But I was on YouTube, and I didn't know anything about. I really didn't know about YouTube. I didn't know how it worked. Really, I've been on it for years. Actually, I've been on it since 2005. I have one of the oldest movie trailers ever on YouTube. Because I've been on it so long, but I really didn't understand the new algorithm or anything like that. So I just knew I just needed to be on it. So I was on Apple. I was on all the audio platforms and YouTube essentially. So when we launched, I was still kind of very closeted about this, and I was still scared because I did not want. You know how it is. You can't say much about spirituality or God in Hollywood because people look at you weird. As open and liberal and all that stuff as they are, you can't say stuff like that. And I was afraid of losing my company, my livelihood that I'd built up with these other shows, which I was doing that at this point full time. I kind of retired. I shut down my post-production house. I wasn't doing any client work anymore. And I would only direct if something tickled my fancy.
Right.
But I was scared. And then about the last 3 months, I just stopped. I stopped doing it.
Really?
I just stopped doing it. I made up things in my head. Said, you know what? I got to rebuild these 2 websites, and I'm busy. I'll get back to it. And then around Christmas time in 2021, Connie calls, and Connie says, "How's the show going?" I'm like, it's been sitting there. I'll get back to it. Don't worry. And she's like, "Look, Alex." And I don't know if I can curse on this, but I have to for historical accuracy. I have to say what she told me. She goes, "Alex, you need to shit or get off the pot."
Yeah.
Because this work needs to be done, and you are the choice. The universe has chosen you. I don't mean that in a grandiose way, but your path is you chose this path. If you don't do this work, someone else will, because it has to be done. Period. So shit or get off the pot. And you can imagine that.
And Alex, your imprint, your light has to be on these projects. They have to be. Your energy has got to be on the show, and your guests, because it's you bringing it forth. Your energy bringing it forth. So it had to be you. I agree with her.
Yeah. So I said, okay. And then I remember sitting down in this office and having a conversation with God. And I said, okay, God, very kind of almost like challenging source, going, okay, you want me to do this, I'll go all in, but I pray and have faith that you will take care of me and my family and provide for us, but I'll go all in. I'll build a set on the other side of this office. I'll get a new camera. I will do this seriously. And because if anyone knows the amount of output of content that I do, once every other week, I'm not in it. Right. So then I started doing 2 a week, then 3 a week, and then it eventually went to 4 a week. Wow. Because I was like, okay, if we're going to do this, let's do this right. I want this catalog to grow very quickly. I want to learn. I want to grow. And every time I put out a new episode, I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm growing. And I'm expanding the reach of what I'm doing. So I did that. And in January of 2022, we had 800 subscribers. We hadn't even been monetized yet. I wasn't even able to make money yet on YouTube. By the end of the year, I think we had already broken 100,000.
Wow.
And now we're at 875,000.
875,000, and you're all around the world. Tell everybody about that, please.
So we expanded into 6 different languages. We have 4 other channels that are different languages. So we have Spanish, German, French, and Portuguese. And then Russian and Dutch are separate audio tracks on the main channel in English. We didn't open up special channels for them. We just gave it as an option on the main channel. So we have 6 languages. We opened up a clips channel as well. And now we just recently launched Divine Encounters, which is near-death experiences and beyond. So they're all mystical kind of experiences, including near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, spiritual experiences, awakenings, and so on. So that's a more cinematic storytelling kind of show. We just launched that less than a month ago, and it already has taken off and it's doing very well. People are really
everybody knows your podcast.
Really?
I've been in Europe and people said, I saw you on Next Level Soul. I'm like, really? Yes, I heard it was great. I was like, yes, Alex is wonderful. Yes, I listen to Alex all the time. Yes, Alex is great.
That's amazing.
So now I'm going to ask you some hard questions.
Okay, bring it. Bring it, baby.
Number one, how did you find your guests for the podcast? And what was that? How did you go through that?
Payola, straight payola, sir. I only. So to be honest with you, at the beginning,
charmed them. Yeah.
No, at the beginning, I leveraged the show that I had before, which had a lot of celebrities and a lot of established people to show people, hey, this is a new show, but this is not a new guy. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm now closing in on a decade of podcasting. It's getting next year will be a 10-year anniversary of me podcasting. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. I thought I was late when I showed up, by the way. I'm like, well, I'll throw my hat in the ring. Why not? So I leveraged my past guests, and that kind of opened some doors. And then it just kind of rolled. And I found that unlike Hollywood and that kind of space, people in the spiritual space were very open on going on shows, even if the show is small. To be honest with you, this shows in the spiritual space most of the times were small. About 3 years ago, you would have maybe 6,000 subscribers, maybe 10,000. If you were a juggernaut, you had 100,000, 150,000 subscribers, because the awakening of people's interest in this wasn't all the way up there yet.
That's right.
It really was. So everyone was kind of used to just going on small shows because that's really other than maybe 5 really decent sized shows. There really isn't a lot of big shows in the space back then.
No, you were the original pioneer of this. If I could just give you that.
Thank you so much.
Because you really were, and you are. And Alex is wonderful. It helps me a lot with getting people on the show, and it's just incredible. And I'm going to ask you, now come the hard questions. Okay.
Go for it.
Well, who's your favorite guest you ever had on the show?
Well, obviously James Van Praagh. I mean, he's obviously. Did you see? I didn't even hesitate, sir. Did you see that? It was just straight out of my mouth.
I didn't need, except me. Like, let's put it this way, what favorite subjects you have, or from the guests that you have so many guests. I mean, you've had top in the world here from a.
I appreciate that. I mean, we're closing.
You're an incredible interviewer too, so you.
I do appreciate that. I mean, it's hard to pin down one. I could tell you shows that moved me.
Okay. Yes. Tell us that, please.
So I had 2 recent channels come on. They were in studio. Okay. And one of them channeled Baba G and Yogananda. You could feel the room change. And then another one, Buddha showed up. Wow. And when Buddha showed up, it was the weirdest energy I've ever felt in the room, because it was the most peaceful I've felt in the room, but the most energetic. So it was this crazy kind of juxtaposition in the room. And I was on a death's doorstep on that time. I was about to go under I was sick. I was coughing up a lung. I was barely holding on for the interview. So in the interview, you'll see me kind of like, as she's channeling, I just ask a question. I'm like, just please keep talking. I can't. I was like literally and she'd flown in. I'm like, not going to cancel on her, obviously. So I was just kind of holding. And then I went down for a week after that. But the second Buddha showed up, I just went, and you could see me change. My energy ran up, and I started being, it was like I was a different human being. And the second he left, I was like, oh, and it was magical. I had one of my favorite conversations as well. And it was a spiritual conversation, but it wasn't one. He's an ex Special Forces Green Beret. Okay. His name's Tu. He was a very, he's an ex Green Beret. He's been in the military 20 years. Right. Serious dude. I reached out to him because I kind of found him interesting. I was like, he's a modern day samurai. They call him the Ronin. He's got a character in a video game called Call of Duty based on him. I mean, he's a serious dude. He's got a show on History Channel. a serious dude. And I was like, I'll throw it out there. And then his wife reached back and said, yeah, he'd love to come on. And then as he got closer, I started building up a story in my, and I don't get nervous, James, with guests. I've talked to everybody, so I don't care. I don't get guests. But with him, I got nervous because I'm like, this is kind of like a serious dude. He's seen heavy stuff in the world, and I'm here going, near-death experience. So like I kind of just built this thing up. I'm like, oh my God, it's his wife who's forcing him to do this. Like I told this whole story in my head. So he comes on, and the second the video comes up on Zoom, he's samurai swords in the background and everything. He's all tatted up, and he's a big jack dude. And first words out of his mouth, he goes, Alex, I've been watching you for about 2 years now, and you've chosen my spiritual path. I can't explain to you how important you are. And I just literally almost fell out of the chair. Literally almost fell out of the chair. And we just had this beautiful raw, because he was so comfortable with me, had this raw conversation about his spirituality and people like him in the military, and being vulnerable that way, and that kind, because you don't talk about that stuff in the military.
That's right.
You don't talk about the afterlife. You can't. Not with the work that they do. Right. So it was such a beautiful, beautiful conversation. Those are episodes that right off the top of my head really, really moved me.
What subjects, like I know you do a lot of near-death experiences, you have ancient civilizations. What are the subjects that are your favorite to explore with guests?
Oh gosh, I love anything that needs to do with. I love ancient mysteries. So all ancient mysteries, as a general statement, mixing ancient mysteries with lost history and spirituality is one of my favorite things to discuss on the show. I love near-death experiences. I've done about 120 of them at this point.
Wow.
And they never cease to amaze me. I love near-death experiences.
And they're all different, aren't they? They're all different.
They all have similar
commonality, but they're a little different.
But they all have their different flavors. So, and the stories of people and the energy of people is really nice. I love talking to channels. I love talking to psychic mediums, just because when a psychic medium comes on the show, or a channel comes on the show, and I made this very, very consciously, is I treat them not as a sideshow. I treat them as human beings, which is something that, as you can tell, I'm sure you can attest to.
Attest to it.
That I want to know about. If you remember our first conversation, I'm like, what was it like when you came out of the psychic closet? How did you deal with it psychologically? Do you think you're going crazy because you're hearing voices when you see someone dead in the room? Like these are questions, true questions I would ask somebody going through what you were going through. Same thing with channeling. So I really try to humanize channelers and psychic mediums, because both of those paths are hard as hell. And if you want to scam people, a lot of easier hustles out there than being a public psychic medium or a public channel. It's not easy. So I really wanted to humanize that work, and
you grounded it. You grounded the work. You ground the subject. And your passion and your genuine interest comes out as well in your podcast. That's what makes it so fun, because we're all part of your in your head saying, ask this, ask that. What about that? And you ask those questions.
Exactly. I ask questions that, look, and if you're listening to a channel for the first time, the question you're going to ask yourself in your head, did you think you were going crazy? Because this sounds crazy. And like when you're psychic, when you saw a dead person in your room, that sounds nuts. I literally always say that. If you remember, I'm like, this sounds insane. And I want to let everybody know that we're all in on the insanity of what's happening here, but let's ground it in what's going on. And let's talk about it in a real space. And as like if it was an actual science, which it is in many, many ways. So I just wanted to ground it and kind of really normalize what was considered a sideshow before, and disrespected, and the gypsies.
Well, I gotta tell you, Alex, I've been around a long time, 40 years of doing this. And at the beginning was my first one out there, and really had to deal with the skeptics. And I didn't know what cold reading meant. I didn't know what skepticism was. And I got it all thrown at me. And it was like such that sense of disrespect, including from Oprah, very disrespectful. And it's like, I didn't understand why people would be so disrespectful. I didn't get that. And as negative as that, I guess you want negative, skeptical, as disrespectful it was, you were the total opposite. It really was just a joy to have someone who is respectful of the work, of the guests, of the topic, And that really, so all those negatives were erased by your positive. I'm going to tell you that.
I appreciate that very much, James.
Yeah,
I
it's very,
appreciate
very
that.
true, Alex. And your heart comes out when you do your podcast. Your heart, your genuineness, and you really care, which is another feature for a great interviewer, I must say.
Well, I appreciate that, and I do truly care, and the work that we're doing on this show, with the work that you're doing on your show, and all the work that you do with everything that you do, it's our job to kind of try to help people along their path.
Yeah.
And I have every walk of life on the show, every religion, every kind of modality, things I haven't even heard of. I'm like, you know what? That's interesting. Let's bring that on. Let's have a conversation about it. And you know what? For the most part, I'm going to say that maybe 2 or 3 guests out of everybody I had a problem with, meaning like a serious disagreement on
Tell
their
me about
point of
that.
view.
What does that mean? Because I can't imagine you disagreeing with someone.
Well,
Tell
no,
us
so there's
not
some people,
specifics necessarily, but
yeah,
example.
so specific, not specifically, but like in general, what it was is that there was, basic understandings of the universe that are held fairly by everybody.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've noticed talking to so many different people, is that the truth is the truth is the truth is the truth. Whether you're a psychic medium, a yogi, a rabbi, a lot of the things that we all talk about, it's just different flavors of the same truth. And yeah, there's some dogma in certain areas, and some programming in other areas, but the general idea is fairly simple. It's very similar. But when someone comes in and starts saying, no, this is this and this is that, and I pushed back on the show, on the episode, I pushed back.
Good for you.
Because I was like, you know what, I'm not putting this out there. And I've had to scrap episodes like that. I didn't, after I interviewed, I'm like, no, it's not going out. Not because I disagreed with them, but because they had ulterior motives that I didn't see until I started interviewing them. And I was like, this is not good. I don't feel right about this episode, not because I disagreed, because there's a bunch of things that are said on my show that I disagree with a lot of times.
Well, let me ask you this. Are those very left-brain people, science people?
Oh no, the science people that I bring on the show are probably some of the most open-minded versions of that side. I don't bring on a scientist that's going to be, like, I'm like, if a Neil deGrasse Tyson comes on the show, him and I are probably going to butt heads. And if he does want to come on the show, I'll be more than happy to. But I'll be very respectful about it and how we talk about things, because I do think a lot of the things that he says are pretty fascinating. And I would probably go more into the universal thing, but I'll start asking him, Einstein said this about, he's probably a god. There's probably something out there that's organizing all of this. So we could go into deep things, but generally speaking, no, it's sometimes more of the spiritual dogma.
Cynicism, right? Cynicism.
No, the spiritual dogma is where I'm a little bit more. Yeah, the spiritual dogma gets in, it mixed in a little bit too much. And a lot of times when someone starts going off a little too far on their dogma, that's fear-based, I will reposition it and I'll move them back onto the main road. I've been able to do that, as I've been doing this for
it's great. Are you kidding? You're an expert.
So I try to move the conversation in a way that I feel that the audience will find benefit out of it. So
you get the fear out of it. You just mentioned you take the fear out of things.
Yeah, if someone's proponing a lot of fear on the show, and this is a weird thing, because you and I have been on the show and we've talked about the future events and that kind of stuff. And that is fearful. There's a lot of scary stuff that has been said publicly and psychics are talking about. But I throw that stuff out there with a caveat. I'm like, yeah, but this is what's going to happen, and there's choices to be made, and all this kind of stuff. But that is something that people are super interested in, and it's something that I call that the gateway drug to get them into the episode.
Yes.
To get them into the episode so they can eat the good stuff. So I always call the broccoli. We're selling broccoli, James. You and I are selling broccoli. Broccoli is a tough sell. It's broccoli, right? It's a tough sell. Let me ask. Hold on. There's a point with the broccoli. Hold on.
Okay.
Broccoli is very tough, right? It's tough sell. But I sell chocolate covered broccoli. And the chocolate covered broccoli, I sell the chocolate aspect of the broccoli. So when someone takes a bite, they get a lot of chocolate, but they get a little bit of the broccoli. And that's how I sell. That's how I sell all of my shows. Sometimes there's a little bit more showmanship up front, but that gets you in, because if I don't do that, you'll just run by it. That's the way I look at it.
Did you always want to be? I mean, you said you wanted to be in the movie business and so forth. Did you ever think you'd be like an interviewer or before a camera? Or,
No, I still don't like being on camera.
I
I'm
was
a
wondering about
director.
that. And would you prefer being the host or the guest or the host?
I mean, the guest, I don't mind. I could look. I talk for a living. I can talk for hours. And being with a guest on the show, I don't mind it. But if I could do the work I'm doing without showing my face, I would love to. Not because of any. I just don't feel as comfortable on screen as I do behind the scenes, and that's just programming in my own world as a director. I acted a couple times horribly, and even though I was acting as myself, for God's sakes, on screen, and I was still bad. It's not something I'm very comfortable with. Now, conversations and interviews, extremely comfortable with it, and I have no problem with it. But if I had a choice, I would much rather that no one know my name and no one know who I am, and I could do the work. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you look at it, this is the choice I've made, and I've decided to put myself out there in this way to do the work that I'm doing, and that's the only way I can do this work. And I've agreed to doing that, and I'm okay with doing it. I have
You're
no
changing
problem.
lives, Alex, for the better.
Yeah, it's a decision.
Just think of that, the conversation you have with your guests, that there are many people listening to those conversations. And people that listen to those, they might resonate with what's happening. That might force them up, open them up to their path, open their mind up to expand it and think a little bit differently. And then there's the rippling effect. They talk to someone who talks to someone who talks to someone, and you're spreading that word, which is just wonderful. So you don't know, we all don't know how, the effect we have with the power of the words, right? And how we change people's lives without even knowing it. But it is really important that you I'm handing you the gold cup here, or whatever.
I appreciate that.
It really, I think that you're like me. You give out, but it isn't easy to receive. But you give and give and give, and you're reaching a lot of millions and millions of people, and it's important. I'm curious, what are some subjects? Well, first of all, there's one question I have, which is kind of interesting. So you've had the show since 21, right? Since
2021, yes, yeah.
Right, and since then till now, have you found that your spirituality has changed in any strong way? And which way has it changed?
I mean, you can't be unaffected by the conversations you have.
Yeah. How has your life changed then?
Oh, my life has changed dramatically. I mean, I was already on the spiritual path, probably about 2 years before I launched the show. I was already meditating. I was already, seeing possibly visions in my meditations, connecting with source in different ways, opening up things inside of myself way before the show. But the show is just really kind of fast forwarded everything in a big way, because I'm just getting not only downloads of information every day that I talk to these amazing guests, but also just the energy of being around people like yourself. Even through Zoom, the energy changes you. When you're interviewing a channel, the energy that comes through a channel is heavy. When you're talking to a psychic, the energy coming through them is heavy, and it's heavy in a reading for 10 or 15 minutes. But sometimes I go in 90 minutes. I feel sometimes tired, exhausted. Sometimes you could even see it in my, originally. Now I can handle it a lot more. My body's kind of getting used to the energy shifts. But at the early
besides energy, though, Alex, besides energy shift, and has it changed your mindset? I mean, do you wake up every day with a different way of looking at things based upon some of the guests you've had? Yeah,
of course, yeah. My life has changed dramatically. I look at things differently. I'm a lot more patient than I used to be. I don't sweat the small stuff nearly as much, unless it's with my children. They drive me nuts. But
you can't apply your spirituality to your children now.
No, absolutely not. They are the only ones who understand what buttons to push, when to push them, and
it's boy, is deal.
And they are great at it. They are my great teachers, as I say. They're great teachers.
They're great teachers. You agree to it, yeah.
But all joking aside, yeah, it's changed me dramatically.
It's enhanced your life.
Oh, without question. And as I continue to go forward, and now that we have a live studio, which we'll hopefully have you in there soon,
you will.
Meeting people, interviewing them in person, the energy is so much different. And you just feel the difference in the conversation. You feel the difference, the interaction with it. But yeah, my life has changed completely.
And curiously enough, subjects have you not covered yet that you'd wish to have some episodes on? Have you thought about, I want to get that one or that subject?
The thing that's funny is that after doing so many episodes, you go, I've heard it all. I've seen everything. I've talked everything. You kind of have that mentality sometimes. You're like, I've heard that before. I heard that before. But then you start you fall into a little crevice and you're like, this whole world on this subject I never heard about. And who are these guys? I've never heard about the Gnostics before. Who are the Gnostics? And who are the Rosicrucians? And, the Templars. Let's go deep down that rabbit hole. And I just had a conversation about Rome and Rome spirituality and how Rome and then how the Roman Empire became the Roman Catholic Church and that whole process. And it's an endless well of stuff. I don't know what I don't know until it's presented to me. So there's not something that's inside of me like, I wish I could talk to somebody about that. Because if it is, I find somebody to talk about that. And I just reach out. And that's the beauty of my job is when I'm really curious about something, I'll just go find the leading expert in that space. And
so is there anything that you're still curious about that you haven't conquered yet?
I'm curious. I'm curious about 1,000 things. I mean, off the top, God, I got somebody. I have the Knights Templar Grand Master coming on the show soon, so we're going to talk. Cool. That's going to be fun. I just had Rome. I had the Roman expert come on. I've talked. So many things, James, but there isn't anything that I can think of off the top of my head that I want to go do. Because once I see that, I really don't know until I see something gets sent to me, or I run across it somewhere in my travels. I'm like, oh, who's that? What are they talking about? I'm like, I had a tarot card expert come on. I never know anything about tarot cards. Now I know the entire history of tarot cards, how they came, what they do, how they come. Like, when did they start? Who started them? How did they start? That whole world. I had an astrology expert come on. I didn't know anything about astrology, and had somebody who really understood astrology at a deep, intellectual and spiritual level. And I learned about that. So I'm always touching on all sorts of little things. And now we're getting into sub niches of sub niches of sub niches to talk about with people. So I'm always learning. And do
you find that people are like, how many episodes have you done so far?
We're closing in on 500 right now. We're closing in on 500 at this point.
And there's not one or two that stand out.
Oh, I've told you. I mean, those handfuls stand out. But yeah, I mean, they all have their. Yeah, I mean, I have when Paul Selig was the channel.
I know Paul Selig very well. I know Paul Selig before he was a channel.
Paul was a reluctant. He's the reluctant channel. I love him. He wrote
a musical. I wrote a music. He wrote my musical. I wrote an idea for music, and it was an Edgar Allan Poe. And I hired him to write the play.
Well, Paul is a lovable curmudgeon. And
there you go.
Is he not? He's a lovable curmudgeon. And I just had Paul at the studio the other day. And I told Paul, I go, Paul, I don't know if you remember or not, but in our first episode, at the end of the episode, I go, hey, do the guides have anything to say to the audience? And the guides were the first ones that said publicly to me in an interview that said, the young man would like to have a question answered. I didn't ask the question. I guess there was something in the back of my head.
Right.
And the guy, so the young man like this answered, and he will shine the light. If I remember, he will shine the light for millions because he has agreed to be seen. And I was like, what the hell? And I was still I was episode 16. Right. So it was really early on. And that was early in that I'm still scared scenario. That's one episode that really I remember because the guides just said that and I didn't ask a question. So that was a really interesting conversation.
Wow. And where do you go from here? Any vision for the future of what you want to do with this, or bring it into a television reality series, or film?
So a lot of people ask me because I have a film background. Are you going to make a movie? Are you going to make a TV show? Yes and yes. But right now we're going to have an event coming up next year.
Oh, that's right. I was invited to that.
Yes, if you're interested.
And I said I would do it. Yes, of course.
So
I said I would help you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have one next year in March, end of March. We're going to be doing an event. That's going to be our first event.
I have something that will help. We're really good for that. So
I appreciate
about that. Yes.
So having that event's going to be good. We're going to be we have our streaming service now, and we're going to be starting to create original content for that streaming service. So we're starting to venture out into building out a library of content and educational materials and things like that. So we're going to be expanding in that way. We have our merchandise store that people are buying.
I just saw that earlier today. I didn't know you had shirts and hats.
Yeah. People want the hat. People want the hat. So that's where it started.
Hello, I'm waiting.
So people started wanting it. I'm like, all right, I'll put something together for you. And it's doing very well. And we're growing that way. And we're hopefully going to be doing a tour eventually. And we want to do a bigger convention of 3,000 to 5,000 people and create spaces for people to kind of come and gather and grow together and so on. So there's a lot of things we want to do. TV shows, obviously, eventually something on a Netflix or a large streamer, anything that could help grow the mission. Yeah. But I am not thirsty for that.
Right. Because it'll happen the way it's going to happen.
It's going to happen, and it's
They're
going to
in charge, right?
It's going to happen the way it needs to happen, and I'm not hungry for it, nor am searching for it, because I'm fine. If no one ever calls, I'm good. Because I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And we'll see where it goes. But I have a feeling that old media is going to start knocking on the door eventually.
I predict you're going to have a television show. I predicted if that we call it these days television. I don't know what we're calling it.
A streaming show, I guess, a streaming show. But something like that.
Anything you do, you'll do well at. You know why? Because you give out so much. You're so passionate. You're so dedicated. And that the spiritual world is helping you so much to get the word out, and what you give out, you get back, and you're just there to help. You're here to serve, and that's the best. I think the best thing we can do is serve humans.
And that's the point of why I do what I do. I really want to help people, and we are, from the messages and the comments that we get, it's that we're changing people's lives. Wow. And from what I hear. And I don't say that in a grandiose, egotistical way, more so that these are messages that we get. And I can't believe the show, you changed my life. And I've met people, I've spoken to people in person who go, you have no understanding what you've done. You've answered a lot of questions. If I have time to tell you one story, my mother is, as you can imagine, one of my biggest fans. And it tells everybody about what I do.
You betcha.
Everybody. And her downstairs neighbor, started watching the show, and he had been diagnosed with late stage cancer. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know how much time he had, and his wife didn't want to really tell him. They just wanted to enjoy the time he had left, and he was really terrified of dying. Scared of dying. And he started watching the show. And he told my mom after a few weeks of watching the show, he said, I'm not scared of dying anymore.
Oh, that's great.
And I said, do you want me to talk to him? He goes, oh my God, he would be so excited if he talked to him. So I got on a FaceTime with him. And if you saw his face light up, wow. And he was so happy, and he started asking me questions and thanking me. And it just changed the way he looked at it. It was so amazing to see that interaction. And I spoke to him for about a half an hour. And then I hung up, and then a couple of days later, my mom calls and goes, you have no idea. His wife said that he is on cloud 9, and he is so happy that he spoke to you, and he's telling everybody that he spoke to you. And he's so prepared to make the transition. And a few weeks later, he passed. But to be able to give that gift to somebody by having conversation and asking questions, it's really why I do this. It truly is. It's a lot of work. You know this, Jim. It's a lot of work, especially the way I do it.
You're fully in. You're fully in.
I'm fully in. It's a lot of work, but I love doing it. And it really is helping people. And that's
you're changing the world.
It's a
point of heart at a time. You're changing the world.
Yes, sir.
So Next Level Souls on all platforms. People find all different platforms.
NextLevelSoul.com is the best way to get a hold of us. If you go to nextlevelsoul.tv, you can check out the app and the streaming service. NextLevelSoul.shop is our merch store. And but nextlevelsoul.com gets you everywhere you need to go. All of our languages are there. All the shows are there. Everything is there. I see that you see alexferrari.com. That's just going to show you a bunch of my stuff. Go to nextlevelsoul.com. You don't want to see more of me. Just go to Next Level Soul and listen to our amazing guests. But yeah, on YouTube, if you want different languages, just search the language. But everything is connected on nextlevelsoul.com.
Congratulations, Alex. Stay on as we get off. You stay on backstage.
Sure. Okay? Absolutely.
Well, thanks everybody, and Alex, thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you for having me, my friend.
Yes, and thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.